Good morning, Mark Halperin's Wardrobe, brought to you by J. Crew. J. Crew, when you're looking for a sweater that looks a lot like a lot of other sweaters. They're not actually our sponsor, but I'm hoping they will be. So J. Crew, get on board. Good morning, everyone. Sean and Dan. Sean, who are you wearing today?
I'm styled by LL Bean.
Yeah. Dan, who
Yeah.
makes that blazer? Is that a Man's Warehouse, Armani? I can't tell.
No, no, no. I think this is Brooks Brothers, but I have a
Yeah.
lot of LL Bean in this house.
Yeah.
Big
They make
fan.
good they make good stuff. Thank you for joining everybody. This is the morning meeting, the program where Dan, Sean, and I tell you what's happening next, why, and a little bit more than that. We're grateful to you for you to be part of it. Just a little quick note on last night's episode. If somebody says something on the morning meeting you don't like, or on Two-Way Tonight, or really on any two-way program related to politics, don't use it as an opportunity to send me an angry email. Learn, because if it's something you don't like and you don't agree with, it's an opportunity to understand what other Americans are thinking. That's what happens on all our political programs. It makes us different, and it's what we're about. So I don't understand complaining. Oh, you had somebody on I didn't agree with. Learn. It's an opportunity to learn. I thought our two guests last night were extremely educational and interesting. If you hated them, ask yourself why. Look into your heart for the presumption of grace and peace, love, and understanding, and recognize that if you want to just hear things you agree with, there are lots of platforms you can go to. That's not this one. Thank you for joining. If you're here on the two-way platform and you want to be in on the conversation, don't go like this. Go like, I don't know, this. Raise your hand like I've raised my hand there. This is a little bit of how to. Raise your hand and get in on the conversation. If you're watching on YouTube or X, you can't be in on the conversation, but you can be if you sign up for my Substack, Wide World of News, or go to twoway.tv and sign up for our newsletter. And then you can get the link to come in and be live and interactive with Dan and Sean. For many, a dream of a lifetime. For people like Professor Kenny, just something that happens every few weeks. All right, I'll run through the daybook, and then Dan and Sean and I will talk all about everything that's happening. Once again, there's so much going on with Doge. There's lawsuits, there's hearings today. There'll be more people fired. There'll be more people writing resignation letters. We'll touch on some of it. I'm not minimizing those things, but there's so many to catalog and keep track of. We don't do it comprehensively, and I would say I don't see anybody doing it comprehensively. There's just too much to do. There's also Europe, where the Secretary of Defense and the Vice President continue to be like Chevy Chase, a great European vacation, adventure, doing all sorts of things. The Secretary of Defense spoke just a few minutes ago. We may touch on that as well. We may
And
bring
he
you
did
some
a
of that.
workout regime with the
Yeah,
troops, which as a
he did.
morning workout person,
Yeah,
I'm impressed.
Well,
yeah,
just also know that there's an undercurrent there. You had a lot of folks who were, it wasn't, how about that? I'll put it this way. It didn't go without note. The last Secretary of Defense and the last Secretary of the Navy couldn't pass a current PT test. So I think part of this is also ushering in a new era of people at the top that show that they can meet standards
Little
in more than
deadlifting in the rain. That was impressive. Yep. All right.
All right. Um, so today on the schedule, sorry, I just got a mind-blowing text. I'm trying to process it and figure out how to integrate it into the program.
Well,
We'll
can
get
I
to
just
that.
note, and I can show
Yeah,
you if you want, but
yeah.
we have over 5 inches of snow in the DC area. I've never in my lifetime or my adult lifetime living here, when Dan knows this from his time, you hit not even an inch. You get a report that there might be a snowflake and this place closes down. The idea that schools everywhere, but the government is opening shows you that these guys, it is a new sheriff that's in town.
You want to lift up your camera and show us the snow? Is that what you're offering to do?
I mean, we got fashion,
Yeah.
workout, weather. I mean, I love the
Here's what
open.
Yeah,
here's
this is the
here's
weather
Awesome.
here's what
segment.
else. Here's what else we have is birthdays. I got two to note. First, two-way fan favorite Mark Caputo turned something today. Happy birthday, Mark. And then this tweet just went out from Chris LaCivita, the most passive-aggressive and hostile birthday wish you'll ever hear, to Ben Sherwood, who's one of the people now running the Daily Beast. Chris LaCivita. Wishing Ben Sherwood, or at Ben Sherwood, of the soon-to-be defunct at the Daily Beast, the most miserable of birthdays. Can't wait to play my game of discovery! Exclamation point. Some of you will find that hilarious, like Sean, and know exactly what it means. Dan, too. Others of you will have no idea, but believe me, that's a great birthday tweet. Trust me. All right. On the schedule today, in addition to people in Europe, at the White House, the president has one event right now, a ostensibly closed press 2:30 p.m. Eastern time signing of executive orders. That could open right up, and it may be
can I tell you this right now?
Yeah, yeah.
So the word just so that this is where we widely expect reciprocal tariffs to come into play.
Yeah.
There you can go down a real deep trade rabbit hole on this. Expect something about the use of 301s. Like this could be big. If you live in Europe, you might want to wait till 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Yeah, today's the day we think for those tariffs and probably some others. 1 o'clock, Caroline Levitt is briefing. Now, let's talk briefly. We'll just running through the Daybook briefly to talk about this issue. Yesterday, 2 photo ops with the Pool Press. The Associated Press reporter, not photographer, was barred from them in response to the Associated Press refusing to change what they call the Gulf of Mexico, Gulf of America. I will say, Brit Hume and others have been critical of the administration. I predict that by Caroline's briefing, they'll have changed the policy. That's what I think is going to happen. But I'll also say this. What they're doing is wrong. It's potentially unconstitutional, which is a strong thing to say about a handling of the White House press corps. I said potentially, Sean. I don't agree with that characterization myself, but Brit and others have said so. Here's what I would say for people on the left and in the press who are all up in arms. Where was your outrage when the Biden administration did basically the same thing? They basically treated reporters differently based on what they wrote and what they said. And you can be all outraged at violations of the executive branch, like what Donald Trump's doing. Absolutely, the press should be diligent. The press should be complaining about this, barring an AP reporter. But where was your outrage when Joe Biden and AOC said, let's not follow what the courts say? Where was your outrage when the New York Post was barred from open press events where there were plenty of seats simply because they covered the alleged, now confirmed, decline of mental acuity on the part of the president? So please be outraged about this, but please ask yourself, where was the outrage on the part of the press last administration? Sean, the ball is on the tee. You first.
Well, I would, yeah. Where was your outrage when Corinne Jean-Pierre stripped 400 hard passes from independent journalists? Where was your outrage? I mean, the list goes on and on. When the Biden administration refused to take questions from outlets that they didn't like. So again, I think there is a question about meeting with them and saying this has become it's a new law. And it's been proclaimed by the government. The Google has accepted it. It's now widely accepted. I mean, the AP does a good job.
It's not a law.
No, I'm sorry. It is an executive order renaming it. The government agencies are following. So it's not like it's some made up one-off thing. It is now policy of the executive branch. And my point is the AP manipulates language all the time. They decide to call things, capitalize things. There's a whole style book built around how they want to manipulate the English language. So just to be clear though, remember just so everyone understands this, they didn't lose their pass. They can cover the president. This is a rotation in which somebody else was subbed in for them, right? So why are you shaking?
Because I want you to say that the White House shouldn't have done it.
Oh, again, that wouldn't have been what I would have done. No.
They shouldn't have done it, right? They should rescind this. They should let the AP back in the pool, correct?
Yeah, I mean, it's a bigger issue because, again, it's way nuanced. There's a price you pay to join the pool rotation, and they've anteed up. Now, going forward, I would argue they could say, hey, you guys aren't going to do this. Here's what, don't expect the following or whatever. I think there would have probably a better tactic that could have been used.
But you agree that they should make these decisions based on news decisions made by organizations, correct?
Well, I think there's a difference between being in the pool where you're representing and your goal is to represent things than having access. In other words, I'm
sorry to interrupt, but this is the AP. This is not NBC News. This is not Politico. The AP provides pictures and stories to small news organizations around the country and around the world.
No. But Mark, no. See, you're misleading people right now. I'm not arguing that the AP can't do its job and get access. Should they be the pool lead on print, which is on the wire service, which is what they are. And if they're not going to do their job and accurately report what's happening by manipulating language, then yes, everyone in the country who relies on that pool reporter, it's not about the AP. Your job in the pool is to represent print or radio or wire. And if you're going to manipulate language to to espouse an ideological bias, then at some point there's a price to pay for that. They're not doing their job. Their job isn't, they still have press credentials. They can sit in the briefing room. They can ask questions. They can walk up. They can do whatever they want. That's the First Amendment. They don't have a right to come in and manipulate what everyone else sees, reads, and hears.
Dan.
I don't think they have an ideological, axe to grind.
Oh, they do. They're
Oh,
not
my
as left. They're not as left wing as the Washington Post, but they're plenty left wing.
Okay. I mean, maybe they're part of the resistance and they're just going to plant the flag on the Gulf of America. I think most people don't really care. And I think that administrations have had a naughty and nice list for as long as I can remember. You don't, you're super critical or you do something they don't like, they don't call on you for a while. They kind of try to make your life a little difficult. And, it's politics. It's not just here. It's all over the place. Probably best that they restore it, but I don't think too many people are paying that much of attention to this.
Only me and Britt. All right. Briefing is at 1 o'clock today. Interesting cadence she's established for how often she's briefing so far. It's no surprise to me. If you understand Donald Trump's view of her role and of the press, this is like what I expected. It'd be curious to see. Sean, raise 1, 2, or 3 fingers. How many networks will cover it in whole or in large part of the 3 main news cablers? How many will cover it? 1, 2, or 3?
Her briefing?
Yeah.
All of them. All 3.
All
At least initially.
Yes.
I think MS pulls out.
Okay. On the Hill today, House is in session. Jerome Powell's testifying before Financial Services at 10 a.m. We're having the first hearing of the Oversight Committee's Doge subcommittee at 10 a.m. That will be interesting. And then at 11, the Budget Committee Democrats are holding a press conference on the Republican budget agenda. Democrats have slowly, again, some would say just 3 weeks in, it's not slowly, but they've maneuvered to now saying we're united on not saying government shouldn't cut spending, not saying these programs are too valuable. They're trying to move to a unified position of they're cutting programs that are hurting real Americans, and that's what
Mark,
the press. Yes, sir.
Do you know when the last time the president signed the budget into law was?
Oh my goodness, I don't know, 5 years ago, 20 years ago.
Trick question. Never. Yeah. It's an HCon res. It's not a law.
Oh, it does not sign. Oh, the resolution. Got it. Yes, it's not. It's just a resolution. Correct. Thank you for the trick. Senate is in session also. Tulsi Gabbard confirmation vote was delayed because of the snow, but it's going to occur, and you can expect to see her at the White House later today being sworn in. The Kennedy confirmation process will also move along. And at 10 a.m., the Commerce Committee is holding a hearing on our favorite topic here, Greenland, the strategic interest in Greenland. So a couple of big hearings there. There's lots more going on in the Hill. All right. Yesterday, as everyone here knows, and again, if you want to be in on the conversation, please raise your hand. Elon Musk held forth in the Oval Office, a striking tableau where he stood there with his son and the president sitting at the Resolute desk. Dan, what do you think the goals were of Musk doing that? That was the turtle on a fence post that he did that. And did he achieve his goals?
Yeah, I mean, God, that thing was so fascinating. I mean, I thought all night and all morning, God, how to talk about this in a short and succinct way. I mean, just, one thing I think that's picked up is just, I think his child next to him really is intentional. I think it humanizes him, it distracts him. I think he has a hard time kind of sitting still. And so I find it interesting that X keeps showing up. I will also just say for all those on here who tan suitgate was the end of the world and a sign of disrespect for the office, Elon Musk took the bar to a new low yesterday. But look, I think the goal was to start trying to get ahead of this. There is bad news starting to trickle out, some sloppiness, some errors. One of your guests last night said, the classic Silicon Valley, ethos of move fast and break stuff. And I think part of this was to get him out there. I think, one, it was kind of us against the bureaucracy and judges, right? He really tried to paint the bureaucracy as this unelected kind of blob that is responsible for so many ills. Trump then kind of hammered on the judges are getting in the way. I think they wanted to continue to put the shiny red balls out there of examples of common sense says, oh my God, this has to be stopped. And why hasn't it been stopped? And thank you for everything you're doing. And then lastly, I think it was just this idea of we are transparent, we are accountable, right? Taking the weakness and trying to make it a strength. Personally, I thought they made the case worse for themselves, but I bet the average person looks at it and says, yeah, they are. So I think, did they achieve their goal? Probably yes, but I think I'm very curious what people in Congress think on the Republican side after watching and listening to that press conference.
Sean Spicer, as John McLaughlin would say, spicy spice.
That probably, in my list of political events, ranked number one. It was epic on multiple levels. I couldn't get enough of that. I DVR'd it. I may just keep going back and watching it over and over again. He exposed the waste and the thinking. I mean, at one point she said, Mr. Musk, one of the reporters, apparently you said that they spent $50 million in condoms from Gaza. They were from Mozambique. And he was like, okay, so how much should we be spending on condoms? How many? I mean, it's just, he exposed the Washington thinking. I mean, my God, it was over and over again. The idea, that he talked about the fact that the idea that the president of the United States, who's elected by the American people, doesn't have access to the systems that the bureaucrats are running to uncover waste, to look at the system, shows that it's a bureaucracy, not a democracy. I thought it was awesome. To Dan's point, I don't think, having been around enough, that this was some kind of planned thing. I think Elon said, hey, and he said, stick around, we're doing a presser. That's generally how it works. It was over and over again, amazing examples exposing what's going on in Washington, casting a light on the issues that have existed, talking about the fact that we can't retire more than 10,000 people a day because we have to send it down through a cable into a limestone mine. I mean, it actually, to me, having worked in and out of government for as long as I did, to not know how ridiculously inefficient, ineffective, duplicitous, wasteful, I got more out of that than I did in 3 years at the budget committee. So I couldn't get enough.
But hold on, the question was, did he achieve his goals?
Yes.
I mean, if we're a couple things, like if we're going to go to the actual one, I thought he talked like a foreigner who has no concept of our government. The way he talked about the bureaucracy sounded like a European country where you have term limits and people come in for 3 to 6 years. And the kind of bureaucracy really does run the things because the elected officials churn, in and out. Like, he kept saying it's the will of the people and Congress, but then they don't want to involve Congress. They don't want the oversight. They belittle judges. I mean, it's like, we have co-equal.
No, but by the way, he did say, the president, for all the hype, and we talked about this yesterday,
right,
he said, I'll accept the ruling of the court. Yeah, sure.
Well,
so
hold on, he did, but the two of them sat there and talked about, like, judges are should stay out of this. That Congress, he talked about them as if they don't exist, as if we, the executive branch, me, Musk, and Trump, can find stuff, stop the spending. Like, Congress appropriates.
Wait, hold on. There's a difference. I get there's two issues here that I think are important. One is the process itself that you're talking about, and then the common sense aspect of it. The idea, what he said yesterday, is that we are the elected, Donald Trump and then me as his designee are the representative heads of the executive branch. And when a judge says you can't look at the books of the executive branch, that undermines democracy.
Hold on a second. It's not, but Sean, one of the reasons that I think he really has no concept of we have civil liberties, right? We have privacy protections. The US government is not a startup. And there's a reason government has those protections. Historically, there have been abuses in this country for not good reasons. So you may say those should be changed, but to simply steamroll over them the way.
But I didn't look at it that way. I don't look at like him saying, but there was nothing that said,
what they're doing.
But I looked at that and saying, great, finally going on and exposing what's really going on.
Let me again, like that's the thing. Like, I think that's why I say they toss out the shiny red balls. In a $2.5 trillion government, there are some things that are done, payments that are made that are not good. And no one's going to disagree with that shiny red ball, right? But having a 19-year-old get into the Treasury payment systems with access to stop payments, that is not okay.
Right. So one of the Obama bros, John Lovett, I tweeted this around yesterday, said this: some of this is pretty annoying because it's stuff that we should have done. That's the Pod Save America, bro.
Yeah.
Oh,
Let
sure.
let me
Look, sorry, Mark.
that's all right. Let me move to two other topics besides the discussion you guys are having. One is they have now acknowledged that the guy who was fired or quit under pressure, who has or has not been rehired, it's not really clear to me whether he's actually been rehired, he was inadvertently or improperly, the government's now acknowledged, not just read-only access to the Treasury system. That's a big mistake. Now, I'm glad they acknowledged it. Mistakes happen. They're moving fast. But it should be noted that something that they were indignant about, they were wrong about. And we don't know if that guy had right access. We don't know what he did. We just don't know. I'm not saying he did anything, but I'm saying we don't know. The other thing is, conservatives were roundly outraged when Joe Biden said Jim Crow on steroids and a bunch of other stuff that's not true. I'm not saying his name because I can't remember his name. I glanced at the chat.
Oh,
okay. Okay. When Elon Musk uses his platform to say things that are wrong, he's reaching millions and millions of people. And his cavalier attitude yesterday, well, sometimes I'll say stuff's wrong. I'm not going to bat 1,000. This is the government. I'm not saying the changes they're making are wrong. I welcome radical change in a system that's not served the American people well. But I do not welcome a cavalier attitude towards saying things that are false to try to influence the public debate with a massive platform. You cannot be cavalier about that. He's not just some guy on this platform going in the chat and saying, hey, they sent $50 million worth of condoms. He's a powerful advisor to the President of the United States with an unprecedented access to influence the public debate. And he can't just say false stuff off the cuff and be cavalier about it without any sense of propriety or proportion. So ends my editorial.
That was my point. I think well said. And Sean, I agree with you and Mark. Doge, the theory of Doge is a good one. The idea of constantly asking, can we do more with less, and how can we, better serve the taxpayer, is a great thing. And Democrats should be upset that Trump is the one, leading this charge, and he is rightfully going to get credit. But that is it. The way Musk speaks and the way they hype it on X, and I said this the other day, that just say things that are not true is unbelievable. And the fact that, look, he says we're the most transparent and accountable organization, I forget what it's, maximum transparency. That is not true. They will not release his conflicts of interest. He is the largest Department of Defense contractor in the world, and he is going to audit or look at the Department of Defense. If that isn't the crook, or not crook, I shouldn't use that term, but if that isn't a conflict of interest, I don't know what is. In no other example of life would you allow that. So, it just, those are facts. And I get it. It's a losing political argument right now in the bigger sense, because the shiny red balls are dominating the headlines. But you set these principles and this practice, you may rue the day you do it.
Sean?
The Department of Defense hasn't been able to pass an audit in 8 years. We spend more on interest now than we do on our national defense. We have an existential threat that we face from China in the next probably 2 years. If someone's willing to go in and look at this, I'm willing to give them a long leash to do it.
But no one's saying
Elon, hold on, let me just,
I
guess my point is, here's the deal. Elon said this yesterday, that he exposes everything he's doing. So let's just say hypothetically that he's posting it all and saying, this is what we found.
He's cherry picking what he wants.
Fair enough. Okay, so Dan, but here's my point. So let's just say that he goes after company Y, and company Y flies stuff to the moon, and everyone's going to say that benefits SpaceX. So I would argue that to some degree he's got a greater spotlight on him than half of the people who do this that we don't know about, that we don't know their conflicts. So to some degree he has, and everyone is looking at this guy. They know his interests. They know what he owns. His contracts are public with the DOD. And if there is one, if he goes out there and starts cutting and whatever, and it's a clear conflict of interest or benefits him in a financial way, we're going to see that in a way that we wouldn't with any other defense contractor.
But hold on. We don't know what they're looking at. we don't know what they see.
They don't know what they're looking at. They can't pass an audit.
But there's no congressional oversight. They are not publicizing everything. So look, I'll give you 3 examples in his 3 weeks. He took a shot at TikTok and said that X ought to be allowed in China. That has nothing to do with the United States and everything to do with his own stuff. He is going after Sam Altman, right? And OpenAI because he hates the guy and he hates the company, right? And there he is standing in the Oval Office with the president of the United States. You don't think that has an influence? He goes out and he sells X's, or the banks sell X's.
But look, here's the thing, Dan. I agree. There's some of this that I'm not, but at the end of the day, net, I like it. I want this to happen. It's well overdue. And for everybody last night, there was a quote from the USAID former inspector general and said, the freeze on this hiring and spending means that we can't go find the waste, fraud, and abuse. And I thought to myself, so let me get this straight. The people who didn't do anything for years now want us to unfreeze the spending so that they can do the job that they didn't do in the first place. At some point, I'm sorry, I've had enough of this. And I'm willing to give, as I said, a long leash to let the guy do what he has to do. If there's conflicts of interest, but the other point that I would make is that he has lost the battles. He doesn't like Sam Altman, and Donald Trump brought Sam Altman and others in, Massason, to come in and do that OpenAI thing. He didn't want Scott Bessent to be Treasury Secretary. He lost that. So, you know, he's not batting 1,000.
Oh, I hear you. But again, like, the largest defense contractor in the world is auditing the Defense Department.
Yeah,
well,
guys, I want to move on to 2 other topics real quick because I want to get folks in. Again, if you want to get in the conversation, please raise your hand. First, just your 1 paragraph take. There's lots going on with the House and Senate Republicans about trying to get a budget resolution done. Sean, where are we headed? Are we headed towards a House bill or a Senate bill, and why?
Well, the House is going to try to jam this today. Again, the problem, we don't have the time to do this. The bottom line is, the way it works is the budget committee puts out this top line number, and then they kind of, this is like old school, they show their math, right? They say, this is how we came up with this $6 trillion number. Is we're going to give 50 million to defense, 50 million to agriculture, 50 million. And the appropriations committee says, thank you. We don't really care how you did your math. We'll divvy up the top line number, the 6 trillion, how we want. Thanks, budget committee. Go sit down. We'll see you next year. So the bottom line is, they will have this fake fight today, which is an annual waste of time because the appropriators don't care what the 302A number is from the budget committee. But getting people on board on that is a challenge. I think that the House is going to have a problem today because most of the Freedom Caucus members probably actually support a 2-bill deal. And Johnson is trying to do this dance to get them there. I just don't see it happening. So Lindsey Graham's going to mark up his bill in the Senate today. And I think he's going to get enough support among enough House members to say, sure, we'll do it your way, that Johnson's not going to get the votes.
I don't know why they don't just bring in Elon Musk. He's going to be the one to audit it anyway. So the Senate's going to roll the House.
Yeah, I think so too. Sean, why is the White House being as passive as they seem, or behind the scenes do you think they're working this with a preferred outcome?
I think there are some people who probably, the feel I get is that more people that matter side with the two bill approach.
Yeah.
The end of the day, they don't care as much, but there is a sense of we've talked about this before, the timing. They need a win legislatively. They want to codify it. The longer you wait, the more you have to worry about existential issues that you don't know. Maybe a member of Congress gets really sick or goes and has surgery and can't vote, and you're down another vote. They don't have a lot of room to play with. So I think that they just want to put some guaranteed points on the board on key issues like defense, border, and energy.
I also would think that given some of these economic numbers and immigration numbers, they badly want that money to get going. I mean, the stories that they've stopped putting out the immigration numbers every day. Why? It's dropping. I mean, they haven't even gotten 0.0001% out of this country. It'll take them a couple hundred years at this rate. And inflation is starting to go up, and there are economic, flashing signs. I think they want that money and they want it out.
Yep, I agree with you. Totally agree. And it's a mystery to me why they can't put up bigger numbers. They're putting so many resources on it. I don't get it.
Because people aren't sitting out there with the sign.
Right, I was going to say, you're right.
Illegal.
But they had a plan, and this is like,
did they?
Miller's been focused on this for months, years. All right.
Yeah,
quickly,
but once you tell everyone that the cops are coming, it's like a high school party. They all run.
Yeah. Last topic, Dan. What do you see? One or two examples of green shoots of Democrats in the last since we last talked here, getting their act together to fight back, if anything.
Well, I think the green shoots are that the base is getting frustrated. And I think whether they're going to drag leadership into kind of a plan, or the leadership's going to come up with one on their own here. For the last, for the 3 months after the election, the party just sat around almost in the fetal position, just crying. And now they're kind of getting angry and they're fighting. And I think if I were the party, I'd do the 3 C's. Elmendorf had the 3 A's. I'd focus on costs, right? Because inflation, the report today, it's still going up. I'd focus on kind of the chaos of economic uncertainty. There are more and more CEOs commenting that this is causing them a headache and they may have to start making some negative decisions. And I would focus on corruption. The law and order stuff, I would try to seize it back with these IG firings, foreign bribery, Eric Adams' letter, which, Sean, you want to talk about a historic letter that will go down in the history books as, it's okay if you're corrupt, but if it gets in the way of helping us, then we're going to get rid of the charges. That was unbelievable.
But Dan, I agree with you. It's unbelievable and it's outrageous. And if it's a sign of things to come, it is a constitutional crisis potentially. But no voter cares.
Well, look, but Mark, we have to start trying to daily drumbeat a narrower set. Like, we can't just scream at everything. Cost, chaos, corruption, like whatever it is, you got to pick your lanes and start pounding away to try to win the public back. And I think he will step in it and give you those opportunities. Now, you have to say what I would do, but I think the country won't care until they do. Until there is something that happens where somebody says, where was the cop on the beat? Oh, we fired them. We blew them out and we haven't replaced them. Or the person we put in charge has no experience in this and was out there, appearing on some platform and not doing their job.
John, do you see anything the Democrats are doing that's good?
No, literally, I was talking to this in the pregame. They posted on Instagram, and I just reposted it because it's sad. Is literally, I'll show this to you. They posted a to-do list. This says what Democrats did today. Like, this is what your child gets at nursery school. Bobby read a book. He played with crayons. He peed and ate his lunch. I'm not kidding. Democrats legislative committee announced 10 target states for 2025 and 2026. Senator Mark Warner and Senate Democrats forced the Trump administration to back down on the hiring freeze. I mean, this is sad. I mean,
well,
honestly,
look, this is what you do. It's just like the immigration rate.
No, look. Right? Here's what you do. They need
awful.
They need to get everyone together and have a coordinated. It's not easy, but at some point you say, guys, we got to sit down. Here's what we got to do. I've been there before. We walked into a broken committee and a broken party and we got it back, but everybody understood their role and was willing to join forces. This is like, you have announced protest outside of buildings, people waving their arms and flailing. It looks sad.
Yeah. And just one more thing, again, to emphasize something Dan said. One of the problems they have now is there is grassroots energy, but a fair amount of it is being directed at the Democrats, at Schumer, at Jeffries. Like, they're like, you guys aren't doing enough, so we're complaining to you to do more, rather than either going off on their own to strategize about what to do about Donald Trump, or to say to the Democrats, let's not fight with each other. We got to be unified. So they got to work that out. But I do think, as I said at the top, they are honing in on this message, and we could be a news cycle away from Republicans putting out spending cuts that will deeply affect red America. And in the hands of Bill Clinton or Barack Obama, they'd be able to make a lot of political ground up on that by saying, okay, here's their Doge. Here's how they plan to deal with the deficit. They're going to give tax cuts to the wealthy, and they're cutting programs that you care about. And if they can't make some ground up on that, then they should fold up their tent. All right, let's bring people in.
Real quick, Mark. I want just for the like, I want, like, last night, President Trump at just after 10 o'clock, welcome back Mark Fogel. I think that was great for the country. It shows this is beyond Mark Fogel's situation and getting him back. I also think it just continues to show a president that's engaged. It's 10 o'clock at night. He's welcoming back a former hostage. the sea change in what we're seeing from our president is so unbelievably different than we did for the last 4 years.
Sean, can I just add to that, which is that, and I said this after his first term, and Joe Biden proved my point with his inability. I think Trump is redefining the expectation of how and when you hear from your president.
Yeah.
I think going forward, people will want to hear both on X and much more frequently than the old Ronald Reagan, one event a day with a formal backdrop and one message driving. Like, I think Trump is redefining the modern presidency.
What I hear is they say at the White House is the president should be as present online for people as much as two-way is. So, couple hours a day. All right, Janet, welcome in. Please unmute. And also joining us is Greg from New York. Greg, welcome in also. Janet, you first after you unmute. Tell folks where you are who don't know and what's on your mind. But first you got to unmute. All right. Don't turn off your camera. Just unmute.
Boy, Janet and Greg have great glasses today. I like this style.
All right, Janet, you got to unmute. I'm going to ask you to do it one more time. While you work on that, let's bring in this strapping young man, Greg, in a snow-covered Central Park. Greg, welcome in. What's on your mind, sir?
Thanks so much. It's exactly where I am. I think the event yesterday, Musk, was pure gold. It was perfect. And I would suggest that those who don't think so are either just too close to it, too partisan. I would hope that even if you're partisan, though, you can recognize this is exactly what people want. And I thought it was perfect. It's also fascinating for me to watch two guys who are so unencumbered with re-election and money, the mechanics of what the hell they're going to do next. That flavor was palpable to me. Also, no culture shock. President Trump has no culture shock. Every president can't believe they're president for the first 2 years. Before they figure out what's going on and how things work, it's time to run for re-election. We just don't have that with President Trump, and I think it's remarkable. Very quickly, the conversation that you guys are having about the Gulf of America, Mark and Sean, to me is totally fascinating. I believe that Sean is correct on the substance and all of it. However, you literally have to have been press secretary to know what Sean knows. So Mark is practically speaking correct for society at large. And I see that a lot, where experts who know a lot and are correct are actually wrong. And the last thing I can say,
hold on, Greg. What am I wrong about? I'm saying that it's not a good practice to decide who gets access based on the content of their editorial decisions. Just not a good practice. I'm not wrong about that.
But you're not wrong about that to a point. But Sean is right in that in practicality, it happens all the time. I don't like it either.
But let me say, just as Musk is singular in his capacity to have influence over the public debate because of Twitter, the AP is singular. And when you bar the AP from the pool, yes, they can continue to write stories. That you are hampering their ability to service their clients all over the country and all over the world, local stations who need public information to know what's going on. So I would negotiate with the AP, let Caroline go to the podium and say what the AP is doing is outrageous. Google has seen the light. They should be doing this in a different way. Have a debate with them, but don't cut off their access because you don't like their editorial decision. It's a slippery slope. And again, I'll say for people I see in the chat, I don't think they're as biased as the Washington Post and the New York Times, but I could go on the AP literally any moment of the day and show you articles that are biased. Absolutely. But then that's a different debate. If you're going to let them in the pool, if they're going to be part of the White House Correspondents Association, and they're the AP, you cannot wisely. And again, I think you guys are going to be proven wrong because I think by 1 o'clock they're going to change their mind.
They probably will because they're being treated differently. Look, Mark, this is to my point. You make a beautiful argument. You're not wrong, but you don't know everything that Sean knows. You haven't experienced everything that Sean has experienced. And the word bar is probably too strong a word.
No, it's not. They were kicked out. And Greg, Sean knows so many things I don't know, but you know what? I know some things Sean doesn't know.
No, it's true. I love it. No, it all works. The last thing I want to say, I'm very frustrated right now with conservative media, because they're wringing their hands about what CNN is doing and what MSNBC is doing, I believe that they are irrelevant. I mean, I see Jesse Waters, the first 10 minutes, he's complaining about CNN. This is too reactive, and this is a problem of conservative media for such a long time. I know it's easy to do, but we are always reacting to somebody else's narrative instead of kind of telling our own stories and setting our own narrative. And it's deeply frustrating to me, and I thought I would see a shift. Well, I made a shift, and I think there should be more of one.
Yeah.
It's a fascinating thing for me to watch.
Yeah. Greg, I got to tell you, I mean, we could do an hour on this, or we could talk privately about it for fun. But as you know, some conservative media is totally built around, like Steve Bannon's show is totally built around playing clips of Rachel Maddow and mocking her. That just some viewers of conservative media, that's all they want. They just want annotation of Rachel Maddow. Speaking of Rachel,
it's also about keeping your foot on the throat. Like you have them down and just
exactly.
And Greg, I'll just add, I totally agree with your analysis of the politics of Musk, and I am too involved. So I did want to speak up just for the process in general, that some of that was just what crazy. But I agree with you. That is probably how the general public took it as great. And we were texting, the three of us and some of the producers last night, what if the Democrats tried to do this? And I was like, they would have like a UN style commission of academics, former members of Congress, everyone. They would have a whole process, and they would have press conferences and a white paper, and it would go in a circle. And Musk is just the bull in the china shop.
Greg, thank you for coming in. We love having you. Please don't slip on the ice, and we'll see you later. We'll see you later. And you still owe me lunch, by the way. Don't forget. All right, Rachel, welcome in. Thank you for joining, bringing the pup. Tell everybody who doesn't know where you are and what's on your mind, please.
I'm in Texas. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. And okay. Sorry. By the way, who was it? I couldn't unmute. She couldn't unmute. Janet. I forget. Janet could not unmute, so that's why Janet's not on. Janet, go back to the drawing board. Go ahead, Rachel. I apologize.
Yeah, I listened to Musk and Trump in the Oval yesterday. I'm a software engineer, and I was just infuriated. About the whole mine thing. I found an article from the Washington Post that was published in 2014 that was talking about this. It had a quote from Obama talking about how terrible it was, or Obama's administration. It also had a quote from Reagan's administration in 1981 saying, we cannot leave this. This cannot be part of our legacy. So, I mean, I was reading it and just getting heart palpitations, like thinking about this from a software perspective and how antiquated our system is. The fact that we have Silicon Valley, like we're supposed to be leading the world, and this is what our government is using. I mean, I was livid. I was so mad. I mean, it's just a complete shift from where we are in the private sector and what we're doing in the private sector. Additionally, the fact that the government is supposed to regulate AI, and this is where we are in the government systems. I mean, I encourage everyone to go find that Washington Post article. It was actually linked in Wikipedia. The government hired a contractor and worked on, paid them for 11 years and didn't even get a system that worked. It's unbelievable. So I understand, the privacy concerns and all of that, but if this is how our government has been working, and it's been working this way for decades, and people have known it's been terrible for decades, something has to change. I'm totally in favor of the move fast and break things sort of policy of Silicon Valley. So I just wanted to sort of put that out there as my perspective. And I was also incensed that the reporters in the Oval were not asking about any of that. They were all asking about Elon and his conflicts of interest. And I understand that should be covered, but this should be covered as well. And so I don't know if they just don't have the intellectual curiosity, or they don't realize how far behind our system is. But I mean, it was just unbelievable to hear that yesterday.
Well, bravo, Rachel.
Thank you.
You're hitting on something so important. No one asked a substantive question yesterday. How long has this gone on? How are we going to fix it? What else is there? It's and
it's not in any newspaper I see today.
Right. I mean, literally last night, CNN had a whole back and forth about this with one of their hosts and a bunch of people about the process versus the idea that, guys, do you understand that this isn't a partisan thing? To Rachel's point, I don't even know who started it. Maybe it was Reagan. Maybe it was Nixon. I don't really care.
It was started in the 50s. I mean, this system was started in the 50s.
But the idea that no one is saying, wow, finally we're going to change that, or we're going to bring a private sector approach to this so that more than 10,000 people can retire in a given day that aren't hampered by whether or not something can make it down to a lime mine shaft. is insane. And that we're keeping, by the way, paper records. It's just, this should be outrageous to everybody. This is not Republican, Democrat, conservative, liberal. It's just stupid. And the idea that we're bringing back common sense is what we should all be cheering for. And the idea that you have a press corps that walks in there and says, Elon, are you wearing a hat? And da-da-da-da, what does X say? And da-da-da. I mean, it's like, guys, you are so out of touch with what's going on. Like I said, I was just, my heart could not have warmed.
Reporters care rightly about scrutinizing these proposals, about the impact of them, etc. What they don't feel is the excitement over the grassroots excitement over it, or trying to explain it so that people can understand what it is that Musk sees. And I blame the administration a little bit. I think they should do a better job explaining this stuff. Now, some of the examples they've given have turned out to be false. So partly why they're not explaining it is they actually don't have the receipts on some of this stuff. But they have plenty of receipts, and they should be giving the reporters the benefit of the doubt and bringing them into the cabinet room and saying, let us walk you through this. This is how this thing started. This is how much the taxpayers have spent on it over X number of years. This is how we're going to change it so that the taxpayers are better served. If they've got the goods on that, and again, on lots of the stuff they do, that's what they should be doing. Instead of, just the stuff coming out or Elon tweets, this is ridiculous. There's a right way to do this that's consistent and can try to get the press corps to be less hostile. They're not doing it. Dan.
Well, and I would just add, there's a way to do this to then fix it. Because a huge problem in the federal government is the IT systems are a spaghetti plate of very old systems. When I ran government relations for H&R Block, one of our biggest advocacy issues was that the IRS computer systems at the time ran on 1960s platforms. And every year we would ask the Appropriations Committee to please appropriate more money to modernize the IRS computer system. We plug into them, or H&R Block plugged into them. So it was in our interest that the pipes work much better. They don't. Now, Joe Biden proposed to spend about $10 billion to modernize the IRS IT systems. It was fought tooth and nail because Republicans didn't want the IRS to have any more money. Now, some of it was for auditors. Yeah, some of it was for other stuff. But my point is, and this is politics and our system of government of checks and balances, fixing this stuff requires massive spend, often upfront, to repair IT systems in the private sector, right? You know that. Now you save money and it can really snowball, but you gotta have the outlays. And so if Musk were to say, because I agree with you guys, it's total common sense. If he says, this is the system, and for X amount of money we're gonna request, it's gonna accelerate this, make it much more efficient, much better, etc. Great. Instead, it's the shiny red ball. And then I'm not sure they want anyone following up on this because the headline is shit show, exposing, give us credit. Now the question is fix it.
John.
I agree to some extent. I mean, but at least start exposing it. I mean, at some point you gotta look, right? So I agree with you. We'll see about the follow-up. But for right now, at least sort of saying we're looking at this and here's why it's broken and ridiculous. Now, again, phase 2 is going to be important, but phase 1 is where you have to start, which is identifying the problem.
Yep.
Rachel, thank you. Great question. Spurred off a conversation I enjoyed and learned a lot from. So thank you. Please come back regularly. Thank you. Sorry, cut your audio a little faster than I would have liked, but that's what happens sometimes with my point and click skills. Beth, welcome in. Thank you for joining. Please unmute. Tell folks.
Good morning.
Tell folks where you are and what the pattern is on that wallpaper, which I love. Just on
Oh, it's a 12.
Yeah, beautiful. Welcome in. Where are you calling us from today?
I'm calling from Illinois, and I'm a longtime Trumper. I met him in 2015 in Iowa. I was invited to a breakfast, and I didn't like him at all. I was a Jeb Bush supporter. And after I listened to him talk, there were 80 people in the room, and I walked up to him and I said, "You're going to prevail." And this was in March of 2015. And I said, but, because I was an elected official, I said, but the press will try to ruin you, just heads up. And he looked at me and he's so tall and he pointed his finger and he said, "Don't you worry, I know how to handle the press." Anyway, so now I'm very excited he's in office. This is for Dan. I love your book, Dressing the Man. I bought it for my husband. Did you get that as a gift?
No, I actually got it myself. Alan Flusser. Yep.
Okay, well, we're going to go through it page by page. Anyway, back to the conversation. I listened to the Oval Office with Elon, and I thought the irony was just overwhelming. And I'd like to propose changing the Democrat symbol from the donkey to the projector, because that's all they're doing. They project. They accuse us of what they're doing. So the reporter that said, "Where's the transparency?" Don't they understand that's what Doge is all about? Exposing the lack of transparency. And then as far as the records are concerned, my husband's an orthopedic surgeon, and many physicians have been put out of business and bought by hospitals because they couldn't afford the Obama records mandate that everything had to be electronic, which was a really good thing. My husband's group was able to keep up, but it's just the irony is overwhelming. And
Beth, let
the
me
Democrats, they need to have some more self-awareness. What do you think,
Beth,
Dan?
before Dan answers, let me ask you, but two areas of transparency and whether you think the White House is doing the right thing. Okay. Elon Musk, according to the New York Times, is going to fill out a financial disclosure form, but it will not be made public. Do you agree?
Which is how SJ, just to be clear, that's the procedure for a special government employee like Anita Dunn during the Obama administration.
Correct, but he's a special government employee. He's the richest person in the world with huge interests before the federal government that are not in a trust or in 10 years ago. He has current interests with the federal government. So again, in the spirit of transparency, would you think that they should make that public, Beth?
Who cares? I mean,
okay, that's your position. Who cares?
So much
Second, previous administration.
Start calculating how much money you have to spend.
Understood. Second,
who cares?
This White House, unlike some previous White Houses, does not plan to make public those who visit the White House, including lobbyists. Do you think that that's consistent with the spirit of transparency? Should people come to the White House to talk about Doge? Should the names of those come be transparently? Absolutely. So you would urge them that should be transparent.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you for those two answers. Yeah, I agree with you 50%. Dan.
And then I want the Democrats to become the projectors.
Yeah, Dan, do you accept
Mark,
the label?
Mark, you said 50%. Which so I'm trying to figure out now which one on which.
Of course, he should put his financial disclosure form public. He's a special government employee.
Okay, but you don't think that they should release the visitor logs?
No, I'm saying I agree with her that they should release the visitor. She said they should release the visitor log. I agree with that. I don't agree with her respectfully on the Musk financial disclosure.
Well, that's okay.
Yeah, I know. That's what this platform's for. Dan, projector party, yes or no?
Yeah, I wish we would stop defending the status quo and simply attacking the process of everything. I agree with all of you, and I agree with the people who have come on. Some of this stuff is common sense. If you've spent time in government, or just the average American citizen thinks, government is not the most efficient place in the world. So looking at it with a fresh set of eyes and looking at ways to change it is good. I wish we would propose our own set of reforms, our own highlight of bad spending, because it's out there. It happened in Trump's first term. It happened in George W. Bush's term. Like, the Department of Homeland Security is a gigantic cluster of agencies. It was smashed together very quickly. Everyone who's been there would say not the most well-run place. So I agree with you that we should step forward. I agree with you too that I think most people don't care about a lot of the details of Elon's, conflict of interest, the fact that they are not transparent. We only know what they tell us, what Elon Musk puts out. Congress has oversight over every single aspect of federal spending. Now, you could say Congress hasn't done a good job with oversight, that Elon is exposing, but when people keep saying nobody is paying attention to this, it is not true. Every single department has an appropriations committee that oversees it. And every single year they appropriate a budget. And having been up on Congress and worked with appropriators, they go through that thing with fine-tooth combs. Now, at times, they know nobody is paying attention. That's how they slip stuff in, because the public just doesn't pay attention. So again, I'm with you. I wish we would stop defending the process and saying every spending cut is an end to democracy. It's not. You're right.
Sean?
I'm gonna hesitate. Like, to me, solving the Democrats' problem is so easy, and they just don't see it. And I just don't want to say it because I feel like they need to go figure it out on themselves. But there are issues that Americans care about right now that is in every single poll, and it's literally right there. Just go for it, get it. They continue to focus on the wrong things. The idea of process, the stuff that President Trump is doing, and I look, some of the tactics aren't exactly my style, but I'm so sick and tired of excuses and pathetic claims about why we can't get things done and not focusing on the priorities that this country should be focused on. We are in debt. The Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security are going bankrupt. No one's addressing real issues. The government wastes money. It's inefficient. It's ineffective. And no one talks about it. And finally, somebody's willing to address it. It may not be exactly how I do it, but like I said earlier, I'm willing to give them a long leash because I'm so sick and tired of the punting every cycle of why we can't do it and the excuses from Congress. So I just, to me, have at it.
Well, the only irony of that rant or that statement is he's not touching the real enchilada.
Yeah,
real big causes of spending.
Yes.
They not.
But
touching.
neither are the Democrats. If there were a gutsy Democrat who could build consensus, one possibility would be to say, here's how we're going to save the entitlement programs, and here's all the corporate welfare cuts, right? Not the cuts that are going to affect people's health care access, not the cuts that are going to affect this and that. The problem is the party has not untethered itself from labor unions and from the special interest groups who would scream to say that. But clearly there's a way to say we're for cutting, we're for reducing the size of government, but we're for reducing the size of government in ways that affect the wealthiest people in this country and the corporate special interests like Elon Musk, and not poor people or middle class, working class people. But again, good, even Bill Clinton, and some of I think he's the GOAT. Even Bill Clinton, I don't think if he were put in his prime, if he were in charges, I don't think he could build consensus within the Democratic Party because the progressive caucus in the House would scream at the whole thing.
Well, I mean, you do, Mark, and I wrote about this earlier in the week. You are right. Like, why the party will not go after Republican sacred cows is unbelievable. But
unbelievable.
I'll go back to, and people may find this like horrifying. When we lobbied on the earned income tax credit to make changes because it is so full of fraud, the number of Democratic members of Congress and progressive interest groups who told us we are okay with the fraud and the abuse because it ultimately puts money in poor people's pockets.
Yeah.
I mean, trying to explain that to our board of directors who almost fell out of their chairs, who just could not fathom that that was the response and the defense of fraud.
Yeah. Beth, one of the things I'm best at is sensing early on the swell of new forming grassroots movements. There's one, people want you to have your own two-way program. That's built, it's already burbling up.
There you go.
So be ready.
The trouble is, when I ran for office, I wasn't Democrat enough and I wasn't a Republican enough. And my own local Republican Party, I've been Republican all my life, they sabotaged my endorsement. They told, when I went to the local committeeman meeting, they gave me a start time of 6 and the committeemen made their vote at 5:30. Now think of that.
Beth, you know what I want you to call your two-way show?
What?
Beth : more than enough. What do you think? What do you think?
Well,
all right, consider it, because if this grassroots movement swells to an inexorable reality that you'll have a show, just think about what time you want it to be on. We only speak in Eastern time. I know you're in Central time. So if you say, I want my show to be...
That should be a law too. That should be a new executive order.
If you say you want your show to be on 11 a.m., recognize that that's going to be 10 a.m. for you.
And I'll give you more details. I live in Peoria, Illinois.
Yeah.
If you don't want to live somewhere in the Eastern time zone, you have complete freedom to do that in America.
All right.
But you should use all Eastern Standard Times in any conversation.
Beth, I'm changing the name of your show right here on the fly. It's called How's It Playing?
Exactly.
How's it playing? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Beth. Thanks to everybody else who came on and asked great questions, including Greg from Central Park. He's a bit of a hobo. He's always in the park. Grateful to everybody. I'll be back at 6 o'clock tonight. We have secretly booked guests. I can't name them yet, but you want to join 2A tonight at 6 o'clock. We'll probably talk about Doge some more because Doge is all the craze. Sean, Dan, closing
Mark,
remarks.
you mentioned birthdays at the beginning. I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge the Commodore of Yacht Rock, Mr. Michael McDonald himself, is celebrating a birthday today.
Minute by minute by minute. Dan, you have a birthday wish you'd like to project out there?
Our third child will be 14 or 15 on Friday. Valentine's Day.
Right. So that's a little bit of a preview.
Yes.
A little bit of a pre-birthday preview. All right. Thank you, everybody, for watching. I'll see you at 6. The three of us will be back at 9 a.m. tomorrow. And maybe there'll be some surprises. Thank you for joining. Have a great day.